Okay, well, I'd like to say welcome to everyone tonight. Thank you for coming. This April 4th. Oh gosh, April 8th, 2021. And thank you all for coming. And thanks especially to those of you who helped me get straightened out on the password code. And also thanks to Bob for getting me straightened out on the Zulu time. When I put zero Zulu, I didn't put the fact that it's going to be 0 Zulu April 9th. So 2359 was a good solution to that. Thank you, Bob. I appreciate it.
Anytime.
So, okay. On behalf of the Deep Dixie Contest Club, I want to welcome everybody. My name is Larry Anderson. I'm located in Tupelo, Mississippi, birthplace of Elvis. We're thrilled. If you can see this screen, I know we have representatives from a lot of contest clubs. And if you don't see your contest club logo shown there, we'd love to add it if you represent it here. I know the Texas DX Society is not there, but it's in our hearts, of course. So welcome and keep inviting people. Just a few announcements before we get started, because we have a wonderful program tonight. We know there's a few good contests coming up this weekend soon. The FTN DX contest, so that'll be interesting. FT8, FT4, maybe FT something else, I don't know. And 4 state QSO parties, Nebraska, New Mexico, Georgia, and North Dakota. And I thought it was interesting in this week's, at least what I received from ARRL on the DX news, DX bulletin, down at the bottom where it shows the contest that be going on, it lists the Louisiana and Mississippi QSO parties, which were last weekend. So I think they had a kind of a hiccup in there. They edit files like I do. They just take an old file and try to make it new and then don't. And also is the Russian Yuri Gagarin DXCW contest is coming up, and there are a lot more too, but those are some that are of interest to those of us here. In every presentation, I try to encourage people who have ideas for future programs to let us know what those are and recommend a speaker if you have one. We right now have about 3 possible presentations in the book. It's been a long time since we had one of these sessions, and I think we have most of those little issues ironed out now. But we have some exciting topics to come up with exciting speakers that I look forward to hearing if I'm the only person in the audience. So just let's keep making this bigger and better for everybody. I have one of my 9 email addresses showing at the top right corner of the screen. And so if you have ideas, you want to send something, send that to me. If you want to go back and look at some of the recordings that we made in the past, our YouTube channel for the Deep Dixie Contest Club is just that, just tinyurl.com/DDCC for Deep Dixie Contest Club YouTube. And then you can see what those are. Been some good ones. And if you'll notice on this screen, most of this interest is so high that most of them last over an hour. Even Jim Bacon's program from the UK on weather and propagation was over 2 hours. And that's just because that's how long the recording is. And that's just because of the interest shown by people and his profound expertise, 50 years as a meteorologist with the BBC. And another thing that's interesting to me is that if you look at the number of views, whatever day I captured this slide, it's been interesting as we go along that some of the more technical topics are the ones that get the most views. I don't know whether that's because some people come back for more and they want to listen to it 2nd, 3rd, 4th time. Regardless, I'm just hopeful that this helps somebody. And so there we go. So tonight's program is highly anticipated, and I've gotten a lot of requests from people who say basically, there's some of these contest clubs have teams, and how do they pick those teams? I mean, how do you sign up for a team? Or is it just the good buddies get on them? So they wanted to know how they do that. Well, so we put together some sort of platitude here that tries to explain that in what we might think is the proper way, teams are chosen or organized based upon selections from those who say, yes, I'll be glad to operate. But there are some certain criteria that are used. If it's a flip of a coin or a roll of the dice or something, but there are some serious reasons that we use this information, and so we'll talk about that. So what I want to do is to talk about our panelists tonight, and I'm going to show each one. And I think what I'm going to do, I'm not sure that I can. I may have to stop sharing my screen. Let's try this with Eric, and y'all tell me. So Eric, what I'd like for each one of our panelists, we have 6 panelists tonight. I'd like for each one to tell who you are, where you're located, and which club you represent, and then we'll go to the next one. So Eric, would you try that? And I'll stop sharing so we can see your screen if I need to. Earth to Eric.
Oh, you muted.
Oh, it's not. It wasn't letting me unmute. I'm Eric Silverthorn. My call is NM5M. I live in the Dallas, Texas area, and I'm part of the DFW contest group.
Wonderful. Thank you, Eric. And the next we have from the Midwest, Anthony. So Anthony, tell us about yourself and who you represent, please, sir.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Anthony, call sign AB9YC. I'm the current president of the Society of Midwest Contesters. I'm currently located outside of the Chicago area, but our members pretty much span 9 land and from coast to coast and north and south and here and around.
Wonderful. Okay. And then Brother Jensen, tell us about yourself, please, sir, and which club you represent.
Good evening, everybody. I'm in Sparks, Nevada, a suburb of Reno. Moved here about 5 years ago from Northern California, and I represent the Northern California Contest Club. And I basically flogged the teams for the NAQPs.
Cool. That is just wonderful. Thank you. And now, Brother Bob, your turn.
Yeah, I'm Bob Cade, IA. I'm the founding president of the Arizona Outlaws Contest Club, and I served the first 4 years as the president. And I don't alone do the NAQPCW teams anymore, but with another ham, K6LL, and I'll get into that in a few minutes.
Okie doke. And now, Gerry, you have a little twist, but go ahead and tell us your stuff, please, sir.
Right. So I'm Gerry, W1VE. I live in Hancock, New Hampshire, famous for the home of 73 magazine pundit, who's now an SK, but like it here in New Hampshire. And I'm a member of Yankee Clipper Contest Club. I have done many of the NAQPs, but I thought the topic was very interesting in that I've been essentially all of my contesting career a part of multis, whether they be multi-singles or multi-twos. And I think it's a very interesting topic today about how we organize not just teams for team competitions like NAQP, but how we organize multis and how people get operators and what decisions are made in that way. So I think I'll bring that to the discussion.
Yeah, and I asked Gerry to go ahead and come on, even though what he's talking about could be a session all its own for those of us who are interested, and the ones of us who have been humbled by having been invited to participate in what I call a superstation. And you get there and get in the chair and you realize, what am I doing here? Well, my name is Larry Anderson, and I'm the president founder of the Deep Dixie Contest Club, and again, live in Tupelo, Mississippi. So I'm hoping that everybody can see our speakers when they speak. And I believe we have all 5 of our guest panelists highlighted in the middle, and you should be able to see them. So let's, since we went in this order, Eric, if you don't mind, if you'll be the first, just tell us what some of the ideas are that you all use when you put out the word for a contest where teams are going to be. What do you do? And I've asked you this before.
Yeah, sure. Well, and Larry, you were on a number of our teams early on, before you founded the Deep Dixie Contest Club. You participated with a number of DFW Contest Group NAQP teams. So the DFW Contest Group they're celebrating their 10th year next month, and there had been there was and still is another contest club in the area, but it's not nearly as active as the DFW Contest Group. When we formed the DFW Contest Group, our goal was to increase activity amongst contesters, and more so by virtue of just looking at the results that were posted, it was apparent that there are a lot of contest enthusiasts in the Dallas area, and I'm sure this is true around the country, that fall into this persona, and that is someone who gets on and contest, spends 3 to 5 hours out of 12 or 24 or 48. They're regular attendees to contest, and they send logs in. And it was actually pretty interesting. We have a membership in DFW Contest Group of over 200 people. Most of them are in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And the only thing that we needed to do to get them to come aboard and participate was ask. So the first few NAQPs, it was really pretty easy to get teams together. And what I found is the first solicitation very rarely yields many replies, but the second and third solicitation for participation is where folks really start committing, and particularly if you start posting information about who else is getting on. So someone will see their buddies on, or they'll see, oh, 5 or 10 people have responded, I'm going to join up. I think in one NAQP, we were able to put together 11 teams, which is really good on the low bands because we were able to work a lot of locals on the low bands. We may not hear them all on the high bands, but the activity seemed to fuel more activity, and the participation as well. People are tracking their scores from one event to another, or they're comparing their results against peers within the organization. And so the idea is activity promotes activity, and so we try to provide as many opportunities as possible, particularly for people with small stations. In the Dallas area, it's hard to find many neighborhoods that have been built in the last 20 years where you can put up antennas that cast shadows. You can put up a vertical or hide wires in some low trees, but it's pretty hard to get permission to put up a tower these days. So we have a lot of members who have small stations, and if you are able to sort those stations in such a way that they're competing against peers with similar stations too, that's also created, it's really created a good result in participation. People don't feel like they're only competing against the superstations.
That is so interesting. I have one question to ask you before we go on to Anthony. So Anthony, you're on deck. But I've had people around here ask me, is Eric's 80-meter antenna really lying on the roof of his house?
It is, yeah. It lays on the shingles of my roof. and there's no science applied to that antenna. When we moved in the house 21 years ago, we had small children, 3 small children. House got quiet about 8 o'clock. I think my wife conked out early that night. Kids were all in bed. So I went up on the roof with a masonry bit and some wire and some ladder line. And I just tossed wire at a random length over one side of the roof and laying on the shingles, and then another wire that kind of slopes down in the other direction. It's sort of a dipole-ish configuration from the peak of the roof, 2-story house. And I came inside and I got on 20 meters. It was June, and LZ was CQing. I called him back. He gave me a 579, and I'm like, oh my God, hot dog, this is awesome. But I set the burglar alarm off in the house. The RFI from the antenna made that go off. So anyway, a few modifications here and there, but I still use that antenna on 80.
Well, we all know that everything is bigger in Texas, so he probably has a 4-acre roof. Okay, thank you, Eric. We talked some more, and I want to get some more conversation among y'all, but I want to make sure that we have a chance to get sort of a phrase philosophy from everybody first. So Anthony, from Society of Midwest Contestants, go next. And what do y'all do?
Oh, we have a variety of efforts. We usually have different people depending on the contest. Like for instance, in like the VHF sprints, we have some individuals. When you get to the NAQPs, you'll have other individuals. But basically, we send the word out to see who wants to participate. And much like Eric said, sometimes when you send out that first call, that a week and a half or 2 weeks out, it's pretty much crickets. And we've tried a lot of stuff over the years. Just have people posting back to the reflector or posting back to the organizer. We've tried Google Docs where people would go there and fill out their name, their projected operating effort, and we try to do it that way. And some work better than others, and you try to do them again, and then you realize it didn't work as good as it did last time. And then the other challenge is when you're trying to organize teams, at least from what we're pretty much geographically distributed, unlike other people who can say, I'm within this geographic or metropolitan area. We've got people in Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana. We're east to the East Coast. We're west to the West Coast. We got guys in Florida, Texas, Kentucky, Missouri. I mean, we're scattered all over the place. So sometimes teams don't make sense in the same way that they would with something that's more local. But we try, and a lot of times you're trying to say, are we putting together a team to be competitive against other clubs and other teams? So then you're trying to stack whoever is committing to the contest to say, okay, I'll put my strong players on a team together. But then the other one is the contest where they don't necessarily have team competitions, but we'll set them up on the online scoreboard. And that's where we'll take the inputs when we specifically ask, what is your effort that you're planning to put in? Just tell me hours of operating time, or tell me your Q count. Are you shooting for a score? And then you can actually stack your team so that you have, quote, one ringer and a bunch of other people at various degrees, so that everybody is roughly handicapped, so that every team can compete against every other team. You got one strong player, a couple middle of the road players, and a couple newer players who are just trying to get into it. And the big thing that we find really keeps people motivated is the online scoreboard. So if you're not using the online scoreboard, you're missing out on a great opportunity. There's nothing more motivating to see the person that's ahead of you, and you realize, wow, they're only 3 QSOs away. What can I do to get those 3 QSOs? When that's a competing team within your club, that can really ramp it up. But when you realize that that's another club that you're chasing, it's like, oh, I can now gain points. Kind of like in match play in golf or bowling, you're looking at the guy who's across from you. You don't care about anybody else. That's the one you're chasing. And that's what we find really works the best. Well, even though some people just don't dig using the online scoreboard, they call it a distraction. I call it a motivation factor. And a lot of our people actually say that being on the team helps them get on the air more, and looking at the online scoreboard also keeps them motivated, because they realize when they see somebody either gaining ground on them or see someone pulling away from them. It's funny, we can talk more about the online scoreboard later, but that's where we find is being most advantageous. But like I say, we've used all sorts of strategies for trying to get those together. And any one time it may work. So, I mean, we could definitely talk longer on that.
Oh yeah, well, I know that those of us in Deep Dixie can speak to that too. And such a little squirrel station like I am, it's interesting to watch somebody come on and they're way back, and then I hear this sound as they're whooshing by me, and I just see them in the distance, and that usually is AB0S. Okay, the next on the list, let's go to Northern California. And so, Mr. Jensen, why don't you tell us about your experiences building teams for clubs, please?
Well, first off, there are a lot less states out here than there is geography. While NAQP does not place a limit, a geographical limit on who can be on a team, we generally try to keep it within the club. We did have, I was contacted, I don't know, a couple of years ago, and there were some people who were out of our area, but they wanted to participate, so we formed a team, NCCC and Friends. Personally, I live in an HOA. We moved here not quite 6 years ago. My antenna is an end-fed half wave that's 6 feet high and runs on electric fence insulators around the wooden fence. I call it a WOOF, wire on organic fence. The good news is I can also operate W7RN. I think some of you from the South Texas area know Tom. Tom and I were at NASA during Apollo, and he moved out here and immediately put up 7 towers, and I get to use all of them if I want to. We generally operate on the principle that NCCC wants to win. And we form our teams right now from people who sign up. And we generally do win or come very close. We have a lot of superstations out here, and the basic thing that I have found, I've been doing this now for about 15 years, and the basic thing that I found is the attention span of contesters extends to the next weekend. And if you can start trying to get team members and get people to sign up, but if you do it any time before the contest this weekend just ended, you're not going to get any help. And so generally we start on Monday night. And we ask for the call sign you're going to use, the station you're going to use, and your call sign, because in the end they all matter. Remote operation is becoming just pretty much commonplace these days, and we have a lot of people that run remote stations, usually in the area, and they tell us if it's not going to be in the area. We've had kind of a diaspora of our members. I'm sure most of you know 608T, Rusty.
Mm-hmm.
He abandoned Silicon Valley and moved to Washington. And we've had several others, and we have a number that participate from the Pacific Northwest. Regarding the activity, breeds activity, that's absolutely our case. The more people we get on, the more signups I get, the next time we have an NAQP. Basically, I think we do pretty well. Our top two teams usually are the really heavy breathers. We tend to collect the names of those who aren't able to operate or are going to operate multi and can't be on a team, just so we know that at the point at Friday night, we're sitting there trying to decide, okay, who's going to be on what team, and we begin to wonder where some of these big dogs are. And this lets us know that, okay, they're in a multi at N6RO. But that's basically how it is out here on the frontier.
On the frontier. Well, yes, there's no question that I guess anybody who's been involved in contesting any length of time knows that when you start looking at the rankings, that the Northern California Contest Club is going to be one of those that's right up there top in multiple times. And sometimes we stump our toe and say, doggone them, you know, why didn't they have another earthquake or something to help us out? Okay, let's move along, and we'll go down to Arizona for a while and find out what's happening among the Outlaws. So Bob, would you tell us about your stories, experience in picking teams?
Sure. We're a fairly new club, like Eric's club. We've been around 11 years now, Arizona Outlaws Contest Club. Like I said, I served as president the first 4 years, and the first few of those years I did all the NAQP teams. And then I twisted K6LL's arm to do the teams, and he's always involved me in final decisions. So that's how we do it anyway on CW. A fairly newer contester, Chuck KF7U, is been doing the sideband teams here for quite a while. Can I try to share a screen here?
Please do.
I'm gonna try to do this. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? There it is. Okay. We have finished, including this year, and this year preliminary results, I think are going to be final since we're way ahead of second place team. We finished first in the January NAQPCW now 7 times since 2012, and 2 times in NAQP sideband. And I want to focus on January only because of the monsoon season. There's a lot of times here in August. We'll go along real good in NAQPCW till about 6 o'clock in the evening, 7 o'clock in the evening, and we'll get a humdinger of a monsoon, 40, 50 mile an hour winds, all sorts of lightning and rain, and basically it shuts us down. I personally do not operate in the summer NAQP. I've been shut out of really being competitive late in the contest like that too many times. So everything that's focused on for a real nationally competitive slant is done in the January NAQPs. And these are some of the teams and some of the scores we've had. I'll go through them real quickly if you can see those. 15, 2012, 2015, 2017. These are all number 1 wins. 18, 19, 20, 21. And then a couple of sideband wins in here too. If you look real fast, you'll see the common mode, the common operators of these have been N2IC, K6LL, myself, and a couple of others. Or I should probably put that as N2IC, K6LL, and a supporting cast, since those 2 guys are SO2R, really good SO2R ops. And I am not, and usually the supporting cast isn't, but we still do okay. Now lately, we've got our own superstation here, N6WIN, who is on this this Zoom. Tim is on this Zoom, built one hell of a nice station in Wickenburg, Arizona. As the crow flies, I don't know what the crow flies, but as my wheels show, it's about 100 miles away from me here to the northwest. And he recruited N6MJ, another another WRTC competitor, in fact, a WRTC winner to operate this year and make an even bigger splash. So we do the usual thing. We put the call out on a Monday, and we'll see who's available. We'll see who's got how many hours they've got committed. We'll see what station they're intending to operate, what their own station is like. We track previous scores, we track improvement in scores, and then we make our decisions that way. But frankly, and this isn't being braggart or anything, this is just factual. When you have N2IC and N6MJ on the same team, you're gonna play hell beating us. That's gonna be a tough road there, especially if N6MJ is at the ND7K. So I guess I could say I have it easier than any of you because we've already got some big guns on the first team. We have made mistakes on team selection. There's a couple of times when both K6L and I agreed on the final team, but we always had this one or two people in that second team that looked like they could really pour it on themselves and should be a member of the first team. And that did bite us a couple times. It didn't bite us placement wise. We still won, but we could have won by a bigger score had we taken maybe a better look at the team makeup. We don't have as many teams as a lot of these other clubs. We typically have 4 or 5 teams for CW, maybe the same for sideband. But like I said, the focus is in January. August is just not the time to think about being competitive here and relying on the weather to help us. So let me get out of this if I can. How do I get out of this screen share? Is that some magic?
Yeah, do you see something that says stop screen sharing? Maybe it's at top or bottom.
Hold on here. No, I don't. Oh yeah, I do. I'm just blind. There you go. How's that?
It's just a matter of time.
I just claim old age, and I'm not a Zoom kind of guy. But that pretty much tells you how we do it here. And as like I said, there's really no magic. We're blessed with 2 or 3 really top operators, and they like operating NAQPCW.
Well, we've heard from 4 of our panelists so far, and already I've made note there's some common themes forming here that'll be of interest. By the way, Tim, N6WIN, if you're listening, Tim Coker, fair warning, you're in my crosshairs to give a program on the station. Maybe, boy, in the perfect world, if we could get Dan Craig to get out of his garden, his new garden, and join, maybe we could have a future program where Tim and Dan could tell us about their experiences, what they've done, and I think it's a wonderful story for a lot of us. Everybody has their own stories, I suppose.
Larry, okay. I've seen his presentations. It'd be well worth getting him on there, Tim, for sure. And of course, Dan.
Yeah, I've had, it's kind of a sidebar. I've had some wonderful email exchanges with Tim back, maybe a couple of years ago, 3 years ago. You know, pandemic gets me out of kilter one time, but his genuine generosity was profound to me when we were trying to help a young ham in British Columbia. And he chimed in and was, he was finding like feed line and stuff like that for this young ham, who is a phenomenal youth operator. And David up in British Columbia, BE7DZO. Okay, Gerry, you're moving from the on deck circle to home plate. So let's give us your thoughts on whatever you want to talk about.
All right. So Larry I had given some feedback to Larry about this topic, which isn't quite exactly related to NAQP teams, but I think it's an interesting topic because I don't see much about it in our amateur radio contesting literature. But first off, just to say, hey, we do NAQP from YCCC as well. Many of the ways that you guys attract teams and have ideas about putting teams together are the same ways that we do it. Usually on a Monday morning, somebody will say, "Hey, anybody interested in NAQP?" And it's slow in the beginning, but the guys who are regularly on will start building a team, and we'll hopefully field quite a few teams. But is it the most popular contest that we do? No, we're really big in the big 4DX contests, but certainly love NAQP and love to do it. The subject that I'm really interested in, and I'd love to hear some other input on, is, and I think it's a mystery to a lot of contesters who have not been around for a while or have never done it, is how are multi-operator teams formed? How do you get invited to operate at somebody's station, whether it be a small station or a super station? And I've had the fortunate pleasure of doing this for about 40 years. I have never had a gigantic single op station for myself, and made lots of friendships with various station owners. And I've gone through a lot of different ways of building teams. And if you're a station owner, you know the pain it is to try and find operators to staff a 48-hour DX contest, for example, whether you be multi-single, multi-two, or multi-operator. This has been somewhat changed in the world of COVID and the world of remote, because you start to have different groups of people being available. What I'd like to know is, I know that among some of the very biggest teams, there's very large investments of time and money. And like sports car racing, people want to staff it with the top operators and try to win the contests. Most of the teams that I've been involved in are built over time, and they're built from a group of perhaps a few tier 1 guys, some tier 2 guys, and a bunch of guys that fill in the background. But what's very interesting over time is you build contest operators. So out here in the East, you guys are probably all familiar with Dave, K1TTT, who's had his multi for many years. And although his number 1 wins are mostly in not the big 4, you can count dozens of contesters that are good big time contesters now that started at Dave's station. And Dave's requirement for being a participant is quite different from any other contest operation. If you have a ham license, you can show up at the door. And that's a station with many towers and some 27 antennas. So it's quite a sight to behold. But I've invited many people to contest teams that I didn't think were going to do well at all, who ended up being a fantastic member. And of course, you have to pick what type of operator it is. You're not going to put a guy who is a brand new contester in the run chair at the peak of a DX contest, but they could be a fantastic operator finding multipliers, right? And so they're an excellent contributor to the operation, and they will come back. They will enjoy it. You just have to make sure that you let them feel that they did well. There can be problems if members of say you're at a very big station and you have a couple of really top-notch operators and you invite a complete newbie. Well, then the serious guys are gonna say that, oh, maybe they were compromised by somebody who wasn't up to their spec. So that's, that when you build the team, you have to understand all that and make sure that the team understands. But I think as we're all getting older and we're trying to find operators to staff these multi-operator stations, we need to be really careful about inviting new guys. It's really important. And you may not win the contest every time, but if you're good at staffing the station and having some strategy, you can do very well. And I'd like to hear, other people's opinions on this. I think it's a really interesting topic that hasn't been discussed that much.
I think that is wonderful. Let me ask a question, and I know that Fred, Bob, Anthony, and Eric have had similar experiences. But Gerry, from your experiences, do you have any data, informal, formal, informal, about, let's say, those not so hot? No, that's not right. I would say not the top rung contester who is just going at it solid for 48 hours. How do they operate when they've had a successful weekend in a 48-hour DX contest when they go back to their own stations? Have you noticed any changes in the way they operate because of their experience there with the top guns?
Absolutely. And especially at in person, right? I mean, it's harder with remote, but when you sit there and you pair, or you learn, you sometimes you may not be the operator who's on shift, but you sit with another pair of headphones and watch an experienced operator operate. There's 1,000 techniques that you learn that you could never learn sitting at your home station and being on the radio. For example, one operator who came with me, who was a fairly experienced contester, came in a CW contest, and I was going fast. I was running rate at quite a clip, and he said, "Oh no, I've learned you can't go over 28 words per minute, or you'll lose the pileup, and it'll never." And I said, "I don't know that rule." Or the other rule, obviously, you have an operator who's a casual contester who's a DXer, and they'll go sit in a pileup because it's a fairly rare multiplier, and they'll spend a lot of time staying there, showing them that, hey, go there. If you don't work the guy on the first call, come back. That's you can come back. He'll be there again. And all of those skills, they won't necessarily learn on their own, but when they're part of a multi-op, it makes a big difference.
That's such a great tip, Gerry. We hear that often, but I just wonder, has there anybody cataloged those golden secrets that some relatively new contesters will learn over time? Things like not hanging in the pile up and then losing your rate drops, and so many things. Wouldn't it be interesting just to know what some of those? I could surely use them. I'll tell you that.
There are contest cookbooks on things, but I think having an experience with an individual being right there is invaluable.
Yeah, I can give you a couple I learned since I just started not too long ago, fall of 2019. So I can give you a couple examples if
Go
you'd
ahead,
like.
Juan.
Okay. So I've been to a couple of.
Wait, Juan, excuse me. Identify yourself so that everybody knows who you are, please, sir.
I'm number 1, number 2, and number 3. So I'm Juan, Alpha Charlie 6, Zulu Mike. Started hot and heavy when I moved here to Tennessee about 3 years ago. Got decided to get more serious into contesting about fall of 2009. And thought I was a pretty good CW operator till I heard about CWT, and I tried that for the first time, fall of 2019. And I got, I think it was like 16 contacts in the first hour. I felt like I just had a fight with Mike Tyson. So I knew right then and there I needed definitely a lot more practice. But I can give you the Tennessee contest group has some pretty heavy hitters. It's not always easy to get tips from heavy hitters just out of normal conversation. They give you more station tips than operating tips until you get in a multi with them. And then they are more active coaches unknowingly than at any other point. That's been my experience. So I'll give you an example. I really never used M1MM, so learning contesting techniques, operating techniques live, and getting familiar with M1MM at the same time is like learning to chew gum and play golf at the same time, I guess. But a couple of tips I learned. So enter sends message was one of the first things you learn, saves time, reduces error. The second thing I learned was using the super check partial and how to use it sparingly, when to rely on it and when not to. And I learned that over time, there's an important thing you have to build up that you never hear about, and it's called call sign vocabulary. I think I've only heard one person ever mention that, and that was at my one and only Dayton University that I went to before COVID shut down. I think it was KD, K5, ZD. He mentioned in one of the briefings about building up your call sign vocabulary. And just because it always shows up yellow doesn't necessarily mean it's a busted call, but the better your vocabulary, you build up your vocabulary, the call signs in your head, the better you'll get at it and the less busted calls you get. So that was another thing I had no idea. That's one of those techniques you build over time. The other one was the CW threshold. This one was probably one of the most annoying ones that happened to me. So I was getting in the seat behind W5MX at a multi with for CQ Worldwide at a Saudi Daisy with Tennessee. He drove down from Kentucky to participate, and he had the enter sends message and the CW threshold set to 2. So I'm sitting there thinking that the computer is messing up because I start typing in call signs and the radio just starts sending CW. I'm like, what in the world's going on? As soon as you type 2 letters after that number in the suffix, it starts to send. And that was real frustrating at first, but then I decided to stick with it, and it took no time at all for me to get used to that. And that has been one of the better operating technique tips to save time and get at it and get my rate to improve. These are some of the memorable ones. Some of the memorable things, techniques I've picked up that as many discussions as I had with a well-experienced heavy hitter operator never came up in conversation, in email reflector, and blogs. Those kind of things just don't come up. And then you learn a few other techniques like what the hell is an XIT button if you're doing search and pounce. Had no idea really how to use that and what the purpose of it was until I started using it for search and pounce. When the rate goes down, and when I joined a heavy hitter team, I was unknown. So of course I get stuck with the graveyard shifts, right? Everybody knows what those are. When the rate kind of goes down, you're getting like 1 Q a minute. Everybody else goes to sleep, and you're left to fill up the coffee pot for everybody when they get up. And that's when you have to search and pounce and just try to do a good job and find mults and trying to keep 1 or 2 Qs a minute best you can. So
There
I
you
had
go.
no idea what the
Okay, well, look, and we could do another whole program on those things. So I appreciate that.
That's just 5 memorable ones that I would have.
Yeah, okay. That is great. Okay, so we have some other questions that have come in, and then before we stop tonight, I have a couple of slides to show about what we do with the Deep Dixie Contest Club, and we're like a new kid on the block compared to some of y'all who have been around a generation, but this is really great. And Gerry, thank you for bringing up that topic. Before we leave what you're talking about, I want to give Fred, Bob, Eric, and Anthony a chance to respond to any of the things that that Gerry talked about. Anyone?
I'll go.
Go ahead.
I've been privileged to operate at a multi-op, and I got my invite after I sat down and focused on contests. I got involved, I went hard, and then I got an invite. And it's amazing how when you show up at a top-notch station like K9 Charlie Tango in Central Illinois, that's just a wonderful station. But when you get to see everything that's going on there, I could tell you all day long how to use N1MM, but a lot of times until you see it in motion, see it in practice, it's difficult to know why it would matter. And then when you do actually get picked to be on a team and you understand that the dynamic is not just you can bang through CW, you can operate at 40 words a minute, or you can run a pile, or you can keep a hellacious rate. The simple fact is you have to be able to work like in, for instance, in a multi-2 where you've got a second station picking off multipliers. You can't go so fast that he never gets a chance to operate the other stations. You don't see that sitting at home with your little SO1R operation. You don't have to fit into everything else. So getting a chance to be at a multi-op is definitely a blessing. Anyone gets a chance to be a part of one, even just to observe, even if you don't get a chance to sit in the chair, try to get involved in that, because they'll open your eyes. And much like what Juan alluded to, there's so much training that can go on to the operators that are actually involved, especially the ones that are like when you talk about the makeup, you could bring in 5 ringers or 6 ringers and have a wonderful time, assuming they can get along, but you can't have a lot of chiefs and no Indians. You have to have people who can do the operation when they're in the chair. You might be in the run chair for a couple hours, but honestly, it's going to kick you in the pants and you're going to need to get out of that chair for a while. Well, you still want more. You sit in the other chair and you start working on multipliers. It's a different technique. It's a different skill, but you still have to integrate with the guy who's running. You want to keep him running. You do not want to interrupt his rate. You want his rate to stay as high and as fluid as possible, which means you now have to interleave with the lockouts and all the stuff that has to go on in a multi operation. And it's just amazing that you see that, but you also have to have people who get along. This is something that a lot of people overlook. Well, I'm a good operator, I should fit in. Yeah, but do you get along with everybody? I mean, you're in a confined space for 48 hours for a big DX contest. You know, you got to sleep with the guys, you got to eat meals with the guy, you got to sit next to the guy. There's just a lot of things that go on. And if you don't get along with the other people, it can be a challenge to be part of a team. And when you see the teams that are put together that everybody gets along, they have a lot of fun, whether the conditions are good or the conditions are terrible. They have a high score because they're being productive. They know when to say, look, I've had enough. I need to stand up. Somebody else hand off the headphones and off they go. It's amazing what you see when you do actually get to see it. And I would encourage anyone to at least observe if you get a chance. But having a team that's just working is amazing. And you don't always have to stack a team to try to win this year. If you could bring on some second tier or third tier operators to say, okay, I need to get you some experience in here because next year when I put up my new piece of equipment, I want to know I've got an operator that I can have sit in the chair at a moment's notice to say, there's not going to be any decrease in the rate. So you bring in these tier 2, tier 3 guys to say, get the experience. Yeah, you're going to get beat up a lot of times if your technique isn't good, but you'll learn the technique and you do that a couple of times. And then later on, you'll be part of maybe not the same contest, maybe not even the same team, but you'll have developed those skills later on. And for instance, when you're trying to put together a team, but you know the conditions are going to be poor, do your big operators want to be there? Well, that's a good opportunity to bring in either young contesters or your lower tier guys to say, okay, I'm going to train you how to do this and you're going to learn and it's going to be hard and we're not going to try to shoot for the moon and the stars. And that's how you find out who you going to bring back for next time, who you going to try to consider to say, well, I'll bring him back for another opportunity, or maybe they would be better in a different mode. Not everybody's good in all 3 modes. And that's some of the stuff you learn. But I'll step back at that point.
Yeah, that's great. I'll pause and see if any other panelists have anything.
Larry, this is Eric,
yes,
NM5M. So I organized teams at NR5M for a long time, CW teams, going back to about 2009 when he got the station going again. And what Anthony said is spot on. About the first year or two, you're assembling the team, and the guys who have a great time and who have available time to come out, they're repeat participants, and they know the station and they know the expectations and they know how, they know everyone there, and so you have a good time and you look forward to the next year. And so it snowballs the first year or two. I remember it was certainly more painful to get operators. both for organizing the multi-ops, the multi-multis in particular, and then even the NAQP teams. I always start early, and sweepstakes, encouraging folks to get on for sweepstakes and so forth in our club. But you can't wait until the last minute, because folks need to be able to make their plans, and you also have to perhaps expand the outreach. So maybe you have, you know, a group of folks that that generally come up and operate in the contest with your team, but for one reason or another, one or two guys can't show up, so you know you're going to be shorthanded. So you know you kind of go through the Rolodex and try to find some other guys in the area that might be interested in coming out for the first time. And oftentimes, you know, just by virtue of making that invitation, now you have a permanent member of the team going forward. And so that's worked really well for us for a lot of years.
I think that's such excellent advice. And y'all have hit on several things, and I have stories to tell about my first experience when I was invited to NQ4I to CQWPX. You know, we got #1 in the country and for sideband and CW. And I will tell one short story. And I know that my Deep Dixie friends are thinking, oh gosh, he does not even know how to tell a short story, or tell it. He does not know how to tell a story short. So I had gotten licensed in 1971, and I loved CW, and I was just real good. And I you know, I was way over 20 words a minute when I went to get my general license, and before the FCC. Well, then, as happens to so many people, when you start teaching school, that was teaching at Mississippi State, and life intervenes, and I was off the air for like 35 years. So when I came back on in 2012 and got re-licensed, during that time, I did not lose my CW chops, because I would continue to when I'd see a sign on a billboard, I would continue to do it CW in my head. And so I loved it. So I was invited to NQ4I. And I remember sitting over there and wondering, what in the world am I doing with these people who have been WRTC participants? And one on the CW, one of my buddies, now understand, the WARC bands had come along, and I didn't know anything about all this. What's this 30 meters, 17? What is that? Well, we weren't operating those things, but there was another thing that I had not encountered, and that was a beacon station. So I'm sitting there running the 20-meter malt station, and John, W4IX, was on the run station, and we call him Drubber because he didn't need to sleep for 48 hours. I spent 43 hours in the chair, and I thought I was slacking off. So I would tell him I found this station, and it was, I'm just going to make this up. It's like KO7SS/B, and it was good. John just slapped me on the back. He said, Anderson, that's a beacon station. I thought, well, good. That's good. Is that like an Indian scout? They're scouting what I didn't know what a beacon station was. Well, to this day, I think John Colyard is one of the operators at that big superstation that Tim's putting together out there somewhere or another too. But he is a terrific guy. But he still teases me about have I gotten the Worked All Beacons award yet? Okay, so thank y'all for that information. We have some great questions that have come in, and I think we need to address these questions from our attendees. So one of them that's come in from, let's see, Mac, help me, from Jim, N5DDT. He says, I have no trouble getting CW ops for an NAQP CW team. Any suggestions for getting more sideband involvement?
We got the same problem here.
It's the
same deal here.
Yeah, it's a similar issue here.
It's harder. That's why it's hard, especially for the small station guys.
That's right.
It's the same out on the frontier.
Yeah.
That makes me feel so good, because if I showed you our spreadsheet for our NAQP sideband, we had 3 teams for CW. We had 5 teams for RIDI, and we had most of 1 team for sideband.
Right.
Well,
I
we have a
think
lot of people who won't even commit to the sideman until like Friday night. And they don't even want to be on a team because they don't want to not put in a showing for the team. So everybody just kind of, keeps it to themselves. And then you look at the online scoreboard when the contest starts off and suddenly there's half of your club showing up and operating. It's like, well, why didn't you get on a team?
Yeah, we have the same thing too, Anthony. It's kind of crazy. We don't even put the teams in usually till about eight in the morning here.
Mhm. Yeah.
And register them at that point because we just don't know. And then at the end of the contest, we will have maybe a quarter of the membership that puts scores in, because we have a ladder too. We got a running thing all year for awards. Anyways, these guys, like you were saying, they will just not be on teams, and some of them are quite capable and good scores. And I just shake
Yes.
my head and say, "Why didn't you get on a team?" And I've never had a good answer yet.
Yeah. Well, one thing that helps in that regard is when you send out your invite, you start getting a list of names. We find that circulating that list of names as the week goes on to say, look, here are the list of names I've got to want to be on a contest in no particular order. And then by the time you get to Wednesday, your list is a little longer. You get to Thursday, your list is a little longer. By the time you get to Friday, then you start putting out the all calls and the last calls. They say, look, I need to start putting together teams. If you want to get in, let me know. I'll put the teams in by such and such a time. And you still have teams being assembled, right up until the hour or two before the contest starts. And that's just any contest that you have a team. Don't ask me why that happens, but
same experience here.
I think Eric has, I call it the missionary approach. He'll do that for the Dallas Fort Worth contest group. He'll just say, here are the operators so far. They're going to be on a team and list those things. And I think some of the other members see that and said, oh, well, shoot, if he's going to be on there, then I may as well too.
It's also important to point out that you're not necessarily expecting 10 hours of button share time or in other events, casual participation is welcome. So the majority of us really benefit dramatically from the QSOs we make in any contest from casual participants. And so just reminding these guys to carve out a couple of hours at a minimum or any time just to get on and work us. That's
sure.
You have to, W0UO says it well. He says, we have to be in the encouragement business.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right.
Gerry?
Yeah,
Sure.
Skip.
I think it's been about maybe 5 or 6 years ago now. They're both here, so they can correct me. But Dean N6DE and somebody from YCC and somebody from SMC decided to make a contest within a contest. We called it the Tri-Club Challenge. And it runs for all 6 NAQPs.
Wow.
And it doesn't matter if you're on a team or not. But what happens is all the scores are totaled up, and you multiply it by the number of participants. And a participant is 1 Q. Well, hopefully it's more. That might be thrown out as a unique, but it's for those people who just really can only put about 30 minutes in before some family thing gets to them. They can participate too. And it has turned out to be pretty interesting, except for the fact that while we won at the beginning, we ended up losing. It's really hard to get past PVRC. They just have a lot of people. But it's an interesting way to approach it in your club. Is not everybody has to compete, but everybody can contribute.
I'll tell you what I think about Skip, and here in the Deep South is a dinner on the ground after church. Nobody has to bring everything, but everybody brings something, and there's enough for everybody. And I think that's a really interesting concept, this contest within a contest, and then the way you do that. And boy, that really is helpful. If somebody's just starting and they're skittish, they may put in 5 hours, but their rate might be 6. But they've participated, but they're working on it. And, you know, in a year's time, their rate might be 30. And wow, look at the progress that's been made. And oh, I like that whole thing about encouragement. So thank you for that. Let me, excuse me.
Dallas Fort Worth either was part of it or still is. I haven't talked to the coordinators on that lately, but I mean, it's really easy to do. And it's kind of a sub-level of competition. And if you're in a contest club, you know, competition is kind of what it's all about.
Yeah, that's right. Let me open up another question here that came from Dave up in the Carolinas, WN4FP. He's in the Swamp Fox Contest Club. I know one of our members, Kevin N4XL, is too. They have 28 members, and he says, we have NAQP coming up, and we don't have enough ops for 2 full teams at times. So do we have a full, let's see, do we have a full team of our best ops, and then a second team of the rest, or 2 teams of 4 evenly skilled teams? How do we pick teams when we're a small
You do
club?
the first.
In this case, I would agree. You put your bestest people on the bestest team and hope that they can do their part.
Okay.
They'll be as good as they are. Otherwise, you end up diluting their efforts. You know, you have a guy who puts up, 1,000 Qs up against a guy who puts up 148. You know, it's
Look
challenging.
at the NA Sprint. The NA Sprint used to be 10-man teams, 10 station teams.
It did.
That's a lot of stations to get together for a format that isn't all that really well liked.
Yeah.
That's true.
And so you say, okay, I've got 15 people. I've got 16 people. I'll put half on one and half on the other. They're guaranteed losers.
That's right. Yeah.
For sure.
Your top
Okay.
team always has to be the team you expect to win.
Yeah.
Agree. Sure.
I'll go along with that too, because I think what we try to do here in the Deep Dixie Club is that we want to have our number 1 team. We want them to be in the top 10.
To the Holocaust myself, I lost.
Well, I don't know how to mute that, whatever that is.
I got
Okay, if y'all have been reading the chat, I don't know if I can read Andy's question completely. Andy's, he's in Germany, I think. So he says, CW contest, has anyone ever done multi in band, 1 PA, 2 TRX transceivers, 2 operators? 1 op runs and the second op gets to help him with the heavy pileup with his transmitter on the same run QRG. The second op may be response to the high pitched signals. The run op takes the lower pitched signals. Both ops have to effectively communicate by hand signs, 1 trans TX on at a time. Yeah, I've been through that hand signal stuff, and I didn't do it right one time, and I got a different hand signal than was in the handbook.
I bet you.
The not agreed upon one, right? But you got the message. You got the message.
That hidden hand signal.
That's a great question, Andy.
Yeah, so I've done it in what I call in a multi-single where we'd have two run ops on the run transmitter and a separate guy on the multiplier transmitter. And we did that what we call bip bop mode, where we use an ACOM commutator. So you have 2 radios, common amplifier, common antenna, and usually put 1 op on lower sideband CW, the other op on upper sideband CW, and it's N1MM. and whoever is the fastest N1MM operator or gets the first call in the log keeps the run going. And yeah, it can be very, very effective unless you're at very, very high rates, and then usually one op can probably do better. But no hand signals. I would sit there next to an operator and we don't talk to each other. We just, because the first guy to transmit, the first guy to key his transmitter is going to get the QSO. And of course, my funny story is I did that with Crassi K1LZ, and he didn't, when he first used N1MM, he didn't realize that you could start transmitting before finishing the complete call. So I would beat him many times, and I got some hand signals on that one too, but but he quickly learned that feature, so we caught up to each other. But it can be a very, very effective mode.
And by the way, Tim Coker, thanks for responding to Andy's question in the chat, and that was great information. I appreciate that. And we do need to remind everybody that while we've talked so much about NAQP, the National North American QSO Party, that these concepts are not restricted to that. It's just that NAQP is a pretty common, well-liked contest where teams of maximum of 5, minimum of 2, maximum of 5, and you can have multiple teams. And then the CW Open has 10, and the sprints I think have 10. But NAQP and CW Open are the ones we have the most familiarity with. Okay, it's been about an hour. Oh yeah, Gerry, the partner mode. Okay, for those who don't know about that partner mode in N1MM, let's take a little side step and talk about that.
Well, so in N1MM, if you're a networked N1MM, if you have 2 stations, if you don't even have to have a radio. If you have N1MM in the network and you have 2 people listening to a receiver on the same time, any one of the operators can type call signs. And as they type call signs, above the person who has the entry window will appear the call sign that the other op is typing. So if they get the call sign before you and your entry window is, for example, blank, all you have to do is hit the space bar, and it'll take the call sign that the other operator found and put it in the entry window. And often, it's amazing. If 2 people are listening to the same receiver, 2 operators can hear 2 completely different call signs. Amazing. I see this all the time. You know, that leads to other, I mean, now there's the call stacking. You can do an N1MM as well. But I think partner mode is something that a lot of people can do and not even aware that the feature exists. But it's really awesome.
I need somebody just to tune in to my station on CWTs and just do that just for the heck of it. That would help me a whole lot. Okay. So we ought to be getting close to the end. With your kind understanding, let me share with you a few things that we do at Deep Dixie, and I take some of my leads from Eric, but I promised some of the I promised some of the Deep Dixie folks that I would talk about this. So let me just switch over here and do this and see if I'm doing this right. Okay. When we find out, listen, we're getting ready right now for the August NAQPs, those 3. So the first thing I do is to solicit participation, just like you have said before, put out the word. But for what's worked for me, now there may be a better way, but what's worked for me is to do it well ahead of time. It's, 2 or 3 weeks ahead of time. If I waited until the week of, because our contesting prowess and activity is not anything like what you all have in those big clubs. So we have some people who they might do 1 or 2 contests a year. So here's kind of an excerpt from an email that I send out to people that said, okay, here's the ready version of the NAQP is coming up on Saturday, February 27th. And then I say, we want to have a record-breaking participation. Now, record-breaking can mean we've never had that few, but we want it to be the most. Okay, so we're pumping them up. And then when they say yes, I'll be glad to do that. What I need to hear from you is what you all have said. I want to know, are you going to be operating, first of all, you're going to be full-time or part-time casual? And sort of like why? If they usually tell me I'll be part-time because I have family coming in or something. Well, okay, that's different, because at the last minute, it may turn out that the family didn't come. And then also at the bottom, I put a note that you do not have to be a member of Deep Dixie in order to participate. So invite your friends. And we have gotten some of the most wonderful operators who either are not a member of a club or are not a member of a contest club, so they don't have that affiliation, or they're a member of a club who's not participating. Let me give you an example. Let's say that that a person is a member of the Louisiana Contest Club, but they're not going to have teams because they can't find more than one person who wants to participate. So we welcome people like that, and we've really had some great luck. So next thing I do is I go have a spreadsheet, create a spreadsheet, and I start popping names of operators and information in that spreadsheet. And then I go looking at 3830 and see about what their history has been, how they've done, so that I can start the first level of trying to figure out which team they might be on. Now, if for our club, if it's CW, that's going to be easy, because if Tor N4OGW is going to be in the game, I guarantee he's going to be number one on number one. And if Gary Van Winkle, K5KU, is going to participate, he's going to be on team number one, no question about that. And we have some other operators like N5EE. He's great. And not to denigrate anybody else, but we know that bunch of folks in Kansas, K0WA and AB0S, are going to be knocking down the door with their buddy W5TM. So I know it's starting to stack up at the top. And then you have somebody at the bottom like NN50, and you think, what am I going to do with this societal never do well? And so I want to know about especially like NAQP, what's your station capability? Since there are no amplifiers and stuff, do you have a tower and you're using the multiple beams, or you have just wires, or nothing bad, but is your antenna in the attic, or do you have it nailed to the roof of your house? And then I'm looking at the past performance and looking at what their things are. And then we tried something new for the NAQP. And that was, I want you to be honest. And if conditions are suitable, what do you think your goal is for the number of QSOs you're going to try to make in that 10-hour period of time? So project a goal. And I don't have to know why, but just give me a goal. And that has been an interesting thing. I don't know that everybody likes it, but at least it encourages me. And so then I prepare this draft spreadsheet. And for each of the teams, I select the team leader, so that team leader will be the one that's corresponding by email to the other ones on the team, getting them revved up, and they aren't always getting this deluge of emails from Larry Anderson. When that's sort of settled out, then is when I have a conversation with our other two officers, John McVeigh, K4AFE, and Jim Rosser, AA5W. And I share with them what I've done, and I say, take a look at this and see what you think. On occasion, I've asked some of our other members to do that. But the more opinions you ask for, the more differentiations you're going to get. And John and Jim and I work real closely together with no agenda. And so that's sort of the thing. Then I register them. So here's kind of the spreadsheet that we start with. And these are colored because they're organized in teams. But at first, it just starts out on a regular old spreadsheet. And that's easy for me because I teach spreadsheets. And so as it worked out, just as it worked out, this was an interesting thing that we normally use the same team names. I know some of y'all come up with stuff like the names of candy bars and soft drinks and planets and all that kind of stuff. And so as it turns out, all of the team members in this Ready contest who turned out to be on Team Elvis, since Tupelo is where the birthplace of Elvis Presley, all of those people who wound up on the Team Elvis had at least a goal of at least 600 cues. And then we come to the next team, and it turns out, and they went from 450 to 600 for Team 2. And then the Team 3 was anywhere from 250 to 450. And some people did not send a goal, but that's sort of what that looks like. Well, so then after the contest is over, and I look back and I think, oh gosh, I wish I had put Larry, Mo, and Curly on a different team so the score would be higher. And so what I do is I go back and look and evaluate things. So here's what you look at this spreadsheet and you see what the goals were. And the next column is the actual number of QSOs they made. And if they exceeded their goal, then the number shows up colored in kind of gold here in bold. And this operator, DNF, did not file. He did not file his score because he had a series of problems. Now, he did have a score of 32,810. That was his claim score, but we don't know. He didn't file, so it doesn't matter. So then this for all these people, you can see the ones that are in the red who did not quite make their thing. Well, we had thunderstorms, we had family problems, and equipment problems, interfacing problems that just wouldn't work. The one operator had to restart his radio 3 times. Well, I was going to tell more about that, but I don't think to. So here was the final score that came out in the report. And here's the claim score over here. And I also put in a column for what was the percentage of reduction from the claim score to the final score. And then I also know that which operators are full-time and which ones said they could be part-time. Now, if I were to show you the actual spreadsheet, I could show you more information. That's not what the purpose of this is. I'm just saying this is part of the process that we use in Deep Dixie to help inform us for preparing a team that has the greatest chance of scoring in the top 10. And we'd like to think we could have 2 in the top 10, but then doggone it, here comes this PVRC and the FRC and the YCCC and the SMC, these alphabet things. People come in with multiple teams that are just clogging up the top 10, and they're not letting ordinary Americans into the top 10. So anyway, that's kind of what we do. And at this time, let's see if we can see if there are any more questions in the chat. John McVeigh, do you see anything that we need to address, or Jim?
We got one answered from Andy Hansen about the optimal number of hours, and we had a couple of people answer him on that. And it was 3 or 4 hours, either one was probably pretty normal. And I don't see any other questions. But if I've ignored one, somebody please speak up or send us a message.
Well, Dale, a good buddy out there in Tom Termina's old property, KG5U, says that in our 5M one year, K5GN and I shared headphones. We found we had different audio frequency preferences on copying callers. Dave operated the radio and I fed him the calls I copied. Man, that's a working recipe, isn't it? Man, if I had KG5U feeding I don't know why he hasn't volunteered to do that for me.
I do.
Man. Oh, gosh.
I'd be
Okay,
curious to
so-
know how much productivity that actually gains over just having the operator sit there and, as long as you're logging cues, it doesn't matter who's next. That's curious.
That's right, Anthony.
I'm
In
kind of
my
with
case,
you.
Anthony, in my case, anything would be an improvement over Larry Anderson. I have to tell you.
Larry, let me chime in just for a second, and I just want to say that we didn't do as good of a job filling out those teams for the RIDI contest as Larry has done in the past. In fact, the last several NAQPs, because we tried something a little bit different, I think, and we used some different criteria. And but in the past, Larry has gotten his spreadsheet down. I mean, it was down to just one or two operators that would have made a difference, and that's how close he got it by using some of those numbers that he had put down there. So it is possible to predict how your guys are going to operate within reason.
And I'll say also to echo what Anthony said earlier, that online scoreboard makes a huge difference because I mean, even in RIDI, I was battling AB0S. I think I was squirting blood out my veins trying to catch up with him. And right at the last moment, the next to the last moment, I got ahead of him. I made a screenshot. I was on the top in the Deep Dixie Contest Club ahead of AB0S. When it all shook out, that sorry rascal I think he had some QSOs in his pocket, and he came out ahead of me.
He was sandbagging, huh?
That's right.
We're likely to have the absolute top competitor in NAQP ready. Jeff, WK6I, travels to W7RM, and he runs single operator, 3 radios, 10 decoders, 2 hands, 5 computers, 2 feet. And I'm not kidding. I have been there. It's only about 50 kilometers from here. I have been there and I have seen him do it. And he nearly always posts the top score.
Yeah, he's the best.
Special operators to do that.
I don't know how he does it. I've watched him and I think he's got 7 minds in there because it just blows me away.
You know, I think Skip, I thought the $6 Million Man was just a TV show. I didn't know it manifested itself, and that is great, though. I want to concur with what you all have said. Our panelists have said about multi-operating on site. The things that can be gathered when you're in the same room with some other operators, they don't all have to be better than you, but when you have that collegial sharing attitude, the whole boat can rise in the water. And I think that's a great thing. And that's why I love the whole concept of trying to encourage newcomers to contesting to join in and be on a team. It doesn't matter if you don't make but 30 QSOs. Those 30 QSOs contribute to the club and the team score. So come on to do what you can. It's better than having an open slot.
Listen to this one, Larry. An interesting story, just super quick. Friend of mine did a remote to New England. He's actually on the call. Gerry, VE4EA, and another fellow did sweepstakes from New England, did CW sweepstakes, and they had an op from their club who really was an abysmal CW operator. He could barely make out a call sign. Well, they won the division. They won the division. So they're giving the plaque to that guy. And he's actually an up and coming contester. And it was, it's a way to motivate him and keep him going. These guys have all had plaques in other contests. So they don't need the piece of hardware, but they're giving it to this guy who barely made 1 Q, but it was great. He had a fantastic time.
Wow. Yeah, that's great. I guess I guess I remember teaching people, whether it was when I was teaching woodworking or computer education at Mississippi State, I developed a little cliche that says we're all beginners, just at different levels.
That's right.
And so we can find people who are better than we are. And I can never compete with some of you all, but I can compete and have fun. So
You really only have to compete against yourself.
that's right.
No, you don't. You got to compete against a lot more than yourself.
Well, if you compete against yourself, then you can find who's next in
Not
line.
in our club.
Hey, Larry, I see that Saul, W38WHK, has a question. on there.
Oh, good. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, he's a great man. Okay, yeah. Thank you. Tim, I tell you what, I could do it, but why don't you go ahead and read Saul's question? Did I miss this?
Okay, you want me to do it, Larry?
Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Saul.
Okay. So Saul, W3WHK asked, did I miss this? Why put all best scorers on one team? Why not even out the teams? And that is, put operators of varying skills on each team.
Well read.
Okay, I couldn't possibly do that, or I'd be assassinated.
Why?
Likewise.
It's a contest club. People are in here to win,
To win.
and
I
you've
don't understand.
got to
teams
put
are all
your
contributing to
best
your
team
club.
forward.
Yes.
The teams are all contributing to your club score. So what difference does it make how if the skills are spread out among the teams? The teams are all contributing to your club score.
Yeah, but
I
you
mean-
want to see your team at the top of the list. Even if it's only one team in the top 10, if it's your team, then you're happy.
No,
Now, there are other
There really isn't
contests.
any club score in NAQP. It's all team scores. There's no club score.
Well, it's all
Oh,
individual.
yeah.
scores,
Okay,
but yeah.
that's what I didn't understand. I
Yeah,
guess.
okay.
Well,
But in other
teams-
contests that don't have a team, you can set up your own team where you can take your own club members, and then you can stack your club members to say, we're going to put a ringer on a team, we're going to put some tier 2 guys, and we're going to put some up and comers, so that everybody's got a chance to score, say, 500,000 points on their team. As long as you stack the people, then you can actually compete against team. You can compete for, you got the tab at the next
Yeah,
dinner
that's
outing,
what I
or,
was thinking of.
or you're passing it out. But that just depends on the contest. But for like the
Yeah.
NAQPs where there is a team competition, you put your best guys out front and let them run.
Okay, you answered my question. I'm just thinking of something different. Thank you.
Hey, whatever works for you. If it works for you, go with it.
No, it doesn't work for me. I don't have nothing to, I have nothing to do. Frankfurt Radio Club, I'm a member of Frankfurt Radio Club, but I don't pick the teams. So, and they do it. They put their best people on, usually on one team. So, which I'm not.
Well,
There's also another way to look at it from the point of view that, you take that first team, you stack that very first team. So you place well team-wise. But then the teams after that, you may well want to try to level those out based on equal levels of competition, as opposed to putting one or two hot shots in with some lesser stations. Maybe what you really want to do with those teams is put a group of people there that are all fairly comparable. So that way they actually have a little competition going amongst themselves. And they don't feel like somebody in their team is just blowing them away. So why bother?
I think, Saul, it can, I think about the Prince Albert approach. You're probably not old enough, Saul, to know what I'm talking about if I mention Prince Albert. Okay. The little motto of Prince Albert was roll your own. And so it may depend upon what your purposes are. And, that's perfectly okay. If it's not your purpose to get into the top 10, whatever that happens to be, but to serve as a garden, to grow expertise over time, then there might be strategies that you would use for that. But like they say in the in the NAQPs, it's like only a 5-man team and you know that the competition is going to be heavy. If you rank number 11, you will not be written up in the National Contest Journal. Now, if Scott Wright is still on here, he might not agree with that, or others.
My question was about contests that where the teams that are formed are within competition within the club, and that everybody contributes to the club score. So you're talking about something different, and I understand that.
Well, if you want to go out on a limb there, you could actually have your club members create their own teams, and then you can do your own little side bet thing and say, okay, I've assembled my team, you assemble your team, and let's go. You know, there's nothing to stop you from doing that, as opposed to assigning team members. Let people develop their own teams.
It's a free
bets only work in Nevada.
That's a good point. Okay, some of our non-panelists, but some of you who are attending, do you have a question or comment that you want to make to our panelists before we shut things down? Anyone, Ferris Bueller days.
Well, before the chat is, thanks to Tim N6WIN for your nice comments on the chat. I was going to thank you on the chat, but we're about to shut down. I thought I'd thank him by voice.
Yeah, Tim is a good man. He's a good man. Well,
I got a question.
Okay.
Logged into Logbook of the World here, and I can't seem to find in the awards page where the Vector Beacons thing is at.
Dr.
Keep
Lopez,
looking, it's there somewhere.
And I'll add one more thing too, Larry. Andy is from Switzerland, not Germany.
Oh, Switzerland. Okay, good.
Be nice.
Well, we're so glad. We're glad to have Andy here, and good morning to Andy.
You bet.
That's good.
Early in the
Dr.
morning.
Lopez, that's right. Dr. Lopez, you just keep looking. After all, your professional expertise is in finding those nefarious souls on the internet who are cyber stalking and things. So go ahead and stalk some.
Yeah,
We, on behalf of the Deep Dixie Contest Club, I want to thank all of you who came, all of you, but especially our panelists, the five gentlemen who stepped forward. And we had invited a lot of other people, or just sent out my blast. And so I appreciate the five of you who could make time and come and give you of your expertise. And we have a lot more to learn from that. We will be putting this recording on YouTube. And so when it gets up there, I'll send out a blast to let everybody know I got there, and share it around with your friends, and let's all improve. So as a last parting shot, I want to ask the panelists if any of you have final words, commendations, suggestions, or recipes.
Thanks for everybody who showed up.
Thanks for asking me, Larry. Good to be here.
Y'all are great people.
Great to be here. So many CW ops. Finally see the guys that we see every Wednesday. And thanks for everybody else. And it was great.
One comment on the phone contest. Just too many people operating on 7.126 or 127. Just tell them where the bandage is.
That's cutting it pretty close, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
That's right. Well, I noticed in today's ARRL letter, they were talking about the, whatever the new name for the official observers is, that they were starting to send out notices to people. And I think they told what state they're in, who were obviously so close to the band edge that they were creating signals outside the band. But
Actually, 7.127, you are off band. You have to be above 7.128.
Yeah, that's right. Well, here's a tip, John. Don't work them.
Yeah.
That's
You're
a great
just
tip,
piling up.
All right, I'm going to say good night to everybody and good morning, as the case may be. Thank you so much. And when we have Tim Coker and his crew lined up or Dr. Scott Wright to do another session, we'll send the word out and pass the word around. And again, I welcome any suggestions. So you all really make life fun. Thank you a bunch, and we'll see you next time. 73 from the birthplace of Elvis Presley.
Bye,
Thank you,
all.
Larry. Thank you. I'll see you.
Take care, Larry.
That's right.
73
seeing
from the
everybody.
birthplace of the United States.
Thanks, everybody.